Welcome back from the break. Hope you got a break, some food, or did some push ups or something to get the blood pumping, which is what I like to do during those breaks. We are going to be continuing now with squats and reversal recoveries, starting on page 350. This section is a fairly quick one, only about 15 minutes or so, and then we'll get into selling, but we will take a 5-minute break after this section of selling. So let's get back to Mark and Mark.
Okay, welcome back. We're on squats and reversal recoveries now, and we want to show you um, how a breakout sometimes will fail to close well on the initial breakout day. And I've seen a lot of people, a lot of traders where, they'll sell the stock if it pulls back and it doesn't have a decent first day of a breakout. And if you're really, really short-term oriented, you certainly could do that. If you're, especially if you're taking very small profits, you're a day trader or you're a very short-term trader, well, you can maybe, choke the trade off. But we find that a lot of the stocks will do this, and but they won't hit your stop. If your stop is set at a reasonable level, the stock price is coming out of a very tight pivot, and maybe your stop is below the pivot 5, 6, 7, 8%. A lot of times, what will happen is the stock will stall out for a day or so, sometimes as much as a couple weeks, and then it will recover that pullback high, that squat or reversal high. And so we call that a reversal recovery when they can take out that high. So first there's the squat. The squat is just simply stock tries to break out, and then it pulls back and it closes in the mid to the lower end of the range. And it looks like, the stock may sat down in the lower end of the range. So we call it a squat. So here, it's a perfect example. And we actually, this was the feed from our platform where we added it to buy alert a couple of days earlier, prior to it trying to come out here and break out. And then finally it broke out or attempted to break out, but ended up squatting. And that would have gotten you into the stock because it had taken out the high and the pivot, but it closed down and you would have been at a little bit of a loss. But again, just a stop below the pivot here, it never breached it. So what I often advise is that you start off with an amount of risk that you're willing to take, and go into the trade. Once the trade pivots and it moves to the pivot, buy the stock and then stick with that risk and try not to circumvent that risk unless you start seeing the violations piling up. If you start seeing ominous signs and there's a number of violations, okay, then maybe you can cut back or even cut the stock out. But you should have already determined how much risk, position size, and calling an audible it could be very emotional. If you start watching the stock and it doesn't go right away, and now you get emotional and you get worried that it's going to stop you out, and now you sell it before it stops you, and then it turns around, it takes off, and you sell a big winner when you unnecessarily. So what we try to do is give the stock at least a few days, if not even a week or two, to try to stage what we call a reversal recovery. And here's a perfect example where we try to break out one day, it takes out the low. And that's where a lot of times these will also, they'll take out the previous day's low. And then a day later they go, because what happens is even the guy who says, well, I'm going to hold it, I'm going to see what happens here. It's squatted, but I'm going to wait. And then the next day when it takes out the low, that's what shakes them out and freaks them out. They're like, all right, or they even set the stop at that day's low. Next day undercuts that and creates that, once again, that shakeout. And those are the very finite amount of weak hands. And once the weak hands are gone, the stock can go, right? Just like we've been talking about. So now you see, bang, it just blasts off and off to the races here. Acts very good. Now you see, same thing applies here. Look how it comes off for a number of days here. You've got a couple weeks, and then in one day, boom, right into new high ground, tennis ball action. So it's acting fine. Let's take a look at another example. So this is Micron Technologies. So right here, I actually bought this stock when it started moving up right here. It squatted, and then a couple of days later, you had a 2-day reversal recovery. Then you pulled back right here, and then again, we don't know this is a natural reaction until we get tennis ball action. So if this stock just kept going down and down,